To embark on our first trip together, I visited the airport with my wife, Lily. But we soon found ourselves surrounded by a group of 5 thugs. "Look at the pretty lady, haha, scram, old man," they jeered. The men, with their arms crossed and fists showing, tried to separate me from Lily. But then, out of the blue, Lily burst into laughter. "Do you really think you can mess with this guy? You're way out of your league. Can you call your boss?" "Huh?" When the boss called Tyler, saw Lily's face, he started trembling as if all the blood had drained from his body. "My name is David. I'm 33 years old. I stand at about 6 feet, a well-built man with muscles what you'd call a lean, muscular type. The reason my body is so well trained is probably because I used to work as a bodyguard. It seems I was involved in protecting politicians and famous people both domestically and internationally. However, during a trip to a remote area with a client, I sustained a severe injury while protecting them. The reason what all my age and background details seem speculative is that I lost my memory and my right hand in that incident. My oldest memory is of looking up from my hospital bed. The white ceiling and the white bandage wrapped around me. With nothing else to rely on, Lily, my girlfriend at the time, was my only salvation. She forgave me, even though I couldn't remember her face, despite our engagement. During my hospital stay, her constant presence from morning till night, her brightness and sincerity, saved me in so many ways. "You being alive is enough for me. Let's make lots of memories together," she said. As soon as I was discharged, Lily and I got married. I quit my bodyguard job and received a severance package and insurance payout, and with Lily's income as a nurse, we had enough to live on. However, not being one to laze around, I started looking for work. Finding a job that would hire someone like me, with a missing hand and lost memories, was tough, but eventually, I landed an office job at a delivery company. My daily pleasure at work is visiting various eateries near my workplace for lunch. That day, I was eating at a Chinese restaurant I'd recently taken a liking to, sitting at the counter. "Is this seat taken?" asked a man. Probably about 10 years younger than me. A man with a soft smile pointed to the seat next to mine. I noticed that the restaurant was crowded at lunchtime, and sharing a seat was unavoidable. "Sure, go ahead," I replied. The man quickly ordered his meal and started chatting with me. "This is a great place, isn't it? You come here often, right?" "I do too," he said. "Yes," I give a vague reply, and the man gives a soft smile. "Sorry for the sudden chat. I'm Steve. I just noticed you looked a bit tired," he explained. "Tired? Yes. You seem really worn out. Why don't you come to my massage clinic?" Is this man a massage therapist? Maybe he thought he could sell his business to me, a laborer who happened to see me. When I didn't immediately respond, Steve forcefully placed his business card in my left hand. I tried to pull away, but he was surprisingly strong for a massage therapist. "The address and map are on the back. Please feel free to drop by. It'll relax both your body and mind." I figured there was no harm in taking the card. I could always throw it away. Steve seemed to read my mind and smiled. "I'll be here again tomorrow, so I can show you the way," he said. Sure." I quickly finished my meal and got up to pay. "See you again, David," he said. I nodded and left the restaurant. But on my way back to the office, something struck me. Did I tell that guy my name? That night, when I got home and told Lily about Steve, she advised me to throw away his business card. "He sounds like a weirdo. It's better not to get involved. Maybe you should eat lunch somewhere else too." Indeed, Lily was right. Being led to an unknown place by a stranger must have made me look quite naive. But it'll be awkward the next time I see him. I'm not good at lying. It's hard to say I don't drink. Just don't meet him. He doesn't know where we live, after all. Lily's words made me pause. Now that I think about it, he did seem to know my name. What? That's creepy. Could he be your stalker? No one stalks a guy in his 30s. I laughed it off, but Lily was serious in trying to convince me. I have a bad feeling about this. It's weird that he knows you go to that restaurant every day. If you see him again, call the police right away. Lily often has sharp intuition, and her hunches are usually right. Following her advice, the next day I went in the opposite direction to try out new places. I realized for the first time that I enjoy exploring unfamiliar spots, the excitement of entering a new restaurant. While waiting at the pedestrian crossing on my way back to work, thinking about exploring more new places, it happened. Whoa! Suddenly, someone pushed me from behind, and I stumbled into the road. I managed to scramble back onto the sidewalk, narrowly missed by a large truck. I sat there even after the light turned green. My chest makes a loud thumping noise and my legs won't stop shaking. It seems that someone is trying to kill me. Though it sounded ridiculous, the suspicion quickly turned into certainty. After that, I had several close calls, someone body slamming me on a train platform, nearly being pushed down the stairs. And the worst was when a car crashed into our house. Luckily, Lily and I weren't home, but the minivan smashed our front door. It was a stolen vehicle, and the driver was never found. Fearing for Lily's safety, I reported it to the police. Increased patrols stopped the strange incidents, but Lily remained vigilant. Let's go on a trip and get away from this house. It'll be a nice change of pace for you, David. A trip sounds good, but I have work. I began to reply, but then realized something. Lily was also worried about my workplace. The first encounter with Steve was near there, so it wasn't a far-fetched concern. I'll quit my current job and look for something else. Then let's refresh ourselves before you start a new job. I'll take a long break. Lily suggested the Philippines for our trip. We had planned our honeymoon in the Philippines, but it was canceled due to my unstable condition after the hospital. Let's go to the Philippines. It's a belated honeymoon. Lily's face lit up as she happily started preparing travel clothes and guidebooks. Her excitement made me look forward to the trip too. On the day of our trip, we waited in the airport lobby for our boarding time. We're staying for 2 weeks. We rented a house, so let's relax. The flight wasn't my first, but it felt like it since I lost my memory. Lily, noticing my nervousness, got up lightly. I'll go buy some drinks. Just wait here, David. Because of Lily, I can keep living, even without my right hand and memory. I watched her smile back with gratitude as she walked away. Lily, holding 2 drinks, was walking towards me with a smile. But then, out of nowhere, a group of unknown men surrounded her. I instinctively ran to Lily, shielding her small frame with my back. There were 5 of them, circling both me and Lily. The leader seemed to be the guy in sunglasses standing in the center, probably the most skilled in combat. But it was okay. I was confident I could subdue them in an instant. After calmly finishing my assessment and decision, I was puzzled by the certainty that welled up inside me. Why was I so confident in my judgment? The men didn't seem fazed by my appearance, instead approaching with smirks. The guy in sunglasses, standing in the middle, taunted me. Nice-looking wife, huh? Scram, old man, no. That's when I realized I recognized the man in front of me. Despite his thug-like appearance with sunglasses and a flashy open-collar shirt, this guy was definitely. Weren't you the guy from the Chinese restaurant? Your name was Steve, wasn't it? I hate smart guys. Steve, I might have used that name. Steve burst into exaggerated laughter, then suddenly glared at me. Just buzz off. My buddies will take care of you. His buddies were probably his subordinates. They tried to separate me and Lily, arms crossed and fists showing. But then, Lily suddenly burst into laughter. Do you really think you can do anything to him? It's not even worth discussing. Can you call your boss? Huh? Steve looked dumbfounded at Lily, but as he realized he was being mocked, he quickly became furious. Playing nice and you get cocky. Hey you guys, change of plan. Take down the old man in front of his uppity wife. I was the first to move, not Steve's buddies. Before the four men could prepare, I quickly pushed the one on the left, throwing off his balance. Caught off guard, he stumbled into his companions and fell, while the man on the opposite end swung his arm at me. I calmly dodged and stepped back, watching him flail and topple to the ground. My senses were sharpened to the extreme, every movement around me feeling like slow motion. Predicting their next move and deciding my response. It was like a scene from a movie, as I subdued the four men without even laying a hand on them. You're the only one left. This plan was your own doing, wasn't it? No way. You're supposed to have lost your memory. Steve looked around helplessly at his fallen comrades, completely useless. Lily sighed deeply at the pitiful sight of Steve. A small fry like you isn't even worth discussing. Can you hurry up and call Tyler? But call him. Intimidated by Lily's commanding voice, Steve jumped to call on his phone. Soon, a large man appeared, probably around our parents' age, with an air of dignity and calm. So, you've become bold enough to summon me, huh? It's an emergency, Tyler. It's about Lily. Lily? Why did they know Lily's name? I was puzzled, but then Tyler's expression caught me off guard, and my small doubt was blown away. Upon seeing Lily, Tyler's face turned pale and he began to tremble violently. Then he furiously scolded Steve. You, what have you done to Miss Lily? I was doing this for Lily's sake. Shut up, Miss Lily. My men have been terribly rude to you. The man began to bow repeatedly to Lily. The quality has really dropped, hasn't it? To think such a man is your subordinate. I have no words to return. Please, feel free to deal with these men as you wish. It appeared that Lily knew Tyler. I was still clueless about what was going on, and Lily looked at me with a troubled expression. I'm sorry. We have to cancel our trip. Let's go home and talk. I agreed to cancel. Even if we went to the Philippines, I wouldn't be able to enjoy it, wondering about Steve and his gang. Surprisingly, Lily also brought Steve back to our house. I wondered why she would bring a man who attacked us into our home, but decided to first listen to her explanation. So, where shall we start? Lily prepared coffee for us and took a sip herself. Why did my body move on its own? And why did you, who gave me the massage clinic's card, send thugs to attack us? Explain it to me in a way I can understand. Steve seemed to have made up his mind on our way here. Returning to his gentle but assertive demeanor, he shrugged his shoulders. Let's start with your story, David. You were my superior officer. Superior officer, was it during the time I worked as a bodyguard? As I questioned, Steve looked at me with pity. Did Lily tell you that you used to be a bodyguard? Yes, but first, you were not a bodyguard. You and I were both in the same Special Forces unit. You were a very strict and serious officer. I was baffled by this unexpected revelation. Wait, does that mean Lily lied to me? Lily didn't deny my question. So, what Steve was saying must be true. Our unit undertook some very special missions. We infiltrated countries we don't have had diplomatic relations with, participated in suppressing civil wars, tasks that would never make it to the news here, and our last order was to guard a VIP visiting a certain country. Steve, back to his casual tone, smirked at Lily and said, so, the bodyguard story wasn't entirely false, and gulped down lukewarm coffee. As it turned out, we got involved in a mess there, but thanks to your efforts, the situation was successfully contained. Thanks, I guess. Steve smirked, clearly not intending to praise me. Then his next words hit me like a shockwave. You single-handedly wiped out the guerrillas surrounding our building, protecting the VIP at the same time. That's not a human feat, even for a superior officer of mine. Everyone there, women, child soldiers, all 108 of them, you took them all down. 108. I couldn't hide my dismay at the excessively high number of casualties. Hearing this unexpected past, I looked at Lily. But she just kept her head down, showing no sign of denying Steve's words. But even you weren't unscathed. When we found you, it was a terrible sight. Your right wrist was gone, and you had multiple bruises and injuries all over, barely breathing. Honestly, everyone thought you were done for, that you wouldn't make it, except for Lily here. What? I stared at Lily in surprise. The suspicion that she was somehow involved in my past was evident on my face. Amused by my shock, Steve continued with a grin. The VIP you protected was Lily's father. He naively trusted the enemy's words and walked right into a dangerous negotiation. In other words, because of Lily's father, you lost your right hand and your memory. That's the past Steve described was completely unfamiliar to me. I just silently stared at the end of my right wrist. But Lily's father unfortunately met with a mishap on his way back home. There were rumors that it was your fault for not providing proper security. However, Lily wouldn't hear of it. She was determined to save you. Lily saved me. I was then brought back to the country under heavy security. But having seen the dark underbelly of various nations as part of the special forces, it wasn't easy to just return to civilian life. Perhaps it was lucky that you lost your memory. Instead of letting you live as a civilian, Lily was assigned to be your guardian. No, Lily was my fiancée. Fiancée. Steve burst into laughter as if he had heard a funny joke. Who told you that? Lily, right. She wouldn't tell the truth to someone she's deceiving. The woman you were told was your fiancée was actually watching over you. Is that so? I desperately wanted to see Lily's face, so I looked at her. But Lily just kept looking down, not moving an inch as if enduring something. But it's too much that you, who followed orders, received such treatment. How much was your severance pay as a so-called bodyguard? You should have received a substantial compensation. Instead, you're stuck doing some lousy part-time job. It's a betrayal to our Special Forces unit. Steve, perhaps excited, slammed his hand on the table. The finished coffee cups rattled softly. That's why I came back for you, to help you regain your memory. I wanted my respected superior officer, a real tough guy, to come back. You must want to regain your past memories too. What about the commotion at the airport? Why did you target me? Steve suddenly softened his approach, giving me a flattering smile. My apologies for earlier. Lily seemed unwilling to let go of her toy, you. So I tried to force you and Lily apart. My memory. Should I try to regain my memory? Sensing my hesitation, Steve deepened his smile. Come on, regain your memory and rejoin the unit with me. Oh, that's different from the facts I know. Lily interjected with an indifferent face. You just wanted to cover up your own failure, didn't you? What? No way, that's impossible. Steve denied, shaking his head, but his demeanor was clearly off. Ignoring the flustered Steve, Lily turned to me with a warm smile. Most of what Steve said is true, but there's one big difference. It turns out, the whole thing started because Steve sold our information to the enemy. When I discovered this scene, Steve desperately made excuses. He claimed he was spying on the other side by pretending to sell information to them. Steve, as proof of his loyalty, arranged a negotiation with the guerrillas, taking the VIP and me to meet the guerrilla leader. However, in reality, Steve had turned informant for the enemy and left me and Lily's father alone in the midst of the enemy. Left behind, I single-handedly faced 108 people and was later found, having lost my right hand and memory. After finishing her story, Lily finally turned her gaze back to Steve. Any excuses? So what? What's wrong with my actions? Cornered, Steve unexpectedly became defiant. Everyone values their own life. I just worked hard to gain status, honor, and wealth. So, you admit to my story." Contrasting with Steve's red-faced ranting, Lily sat quietly on the sofa. Triumphant, Steve pointed at Lily unapologetically and declared, "Yes, I did it all, but so what? A superior officer who lost his memory, and a woman completely charmed by such a man. No one will believe the fanciful tales of people like you." "Maybe you're right." Finally admitting your powerlessness, he boasted proudly. That's when Steve twisted his head in confusion and rummaged through his jacket pocket. He pulled out phone, buzzing with an incoming message. A message from the boss. "What? Why am I the target of punishment? Thank you for explaining everything yourself." Contrasting with the flustered Steve, Lily calmly sipped her coffee. "Impossible. It was you. If it was such a good plan, I thought I should share it with the boss too." "You were on the phone," Steve, with eyes wide open, shouted, and Lily smiled sweetly, showing her cell phone. This screen was in a call state, displaying the name Tyler prominently. In other words, Steve's plan to deceive the special forces using me had been fully exposed to Tyler. From the beginning, I had Tyler listen to everything. I'm sure he was deeply moved by your passion for the special forces. Steve tried to flee immediately, but before he could, several men entered from the entrance. Their imposing stature moved silently, their abilities far surpassing the thugs I had seen at the airport. Recognizing Tyler's face among the men who appeared last, Steve slumped in resignation. "Prepare your excuses. I'll deny everything." "Yes." Defeated, Steve was escorted away by the men flanking him on either side. Once they were out of sight, Lily let out a deep sigh of relief. Finally, it's over. Then, with a serenity unlike before, Lily began to explain what happened next. Steve should have been dealt with for his betrayal, but he immediately fled. I was injured and unable to speak, and the only other witness, Lily's father, died of weakness before he could reveal Steve's betrayal. But Lily, having heard her father's last words, volunteered to be my guardian in order to pursue Steve. Steve lured you to the massage clinic, probably thinking of securing and disposing of you. Now that you're the only witness left, he planned to eliminate you and erase all evidence, then lie his way back into the special forces. So you suspected Steve from the start? At my question, Lily quietly nodded. I used you as bait to lure Steve out, and by pretending that we were fleeing overseas, we managed to capture the panicked Steve. And Tyler, he was the captain of our unit back then. Knowing I was pursuing the real perpetrator, he entrusted Steve's handling to me. Lily bowed deeply as she finished speaking. I'm sorry for lying to you. The lie about being your fiancé was just as Steve said. Even though it was to catch Steve, I did something terrible to you. I was shaken by the continuous revelations of truth and just stared at Lily's bowed head. At first, I was with you only for the mission, but now, I genuinely love you. It might be hard to believe, but these last few years have been the happiest of my life. As she finished, drops began to fall on the table. Lily was quietly shedding tears without showing her face. Since I regained consciousness, Lily's smile had always been by my side. Seeing my wife's tears for the first time, I took a deep breath. I don't intend to blame you, Lily. David. Lily looked up, her face wet with tears. I regained my trust in others while living with you. I can only be grateful for your protection, not resentful. But, is it really okay? I deceived you. I wrapped my arms around Lily, embracing her. Using my right wrist, I gently patted her thin back to calm her. We may face danger again, but this time, I'll protect you from any harm. From now on, you're my bodyguard. Lily smiled faintly and hugged me back. After that, Steve's whereabouts remained unknown. I asked Lily once, but she just smiled and said, "Don't worry, He'll never come near us again. What happened to Steve afterwards is a mystery, but he probably isn't leading a decent life. Later, Lily reported to the boss that I still had amnesia. I don't know what happened inside the unit, but it seems there has been no reprimand from the boss so far. Now, Lily and I live peacefully, forgetting our special forces past. We finally went on the Philippine trip that had been postponed. My wife and I thoroughly enjoyed our belated honeymoon. Let's always travel together from now on. As the sun set over the tropical sea, Lily smiled happily. I haven't told Lily, but I'm gradually regaining my memory. With the skills honed in my past life, I feel like I can do anything to protect this smile. I hear you helped a blind woman. Ha, you ruined a crucial business deal for our company just for some useless nobody who won't make a difference in society. Is that it? You always had such noble principles, didn't you? And just so you know, you're fired. These were the words of my boss, John, as he fired me for skipping an important business meeting to help a blind woman. I've always believed in helping others and have tried to fulfill my job with this principle. But in a meritocracy, personal beliefs don't really matter. That's what I thought when I was fired. I knew there would be losses along the way, but I never doubted the path I had chosen. This is my story about how I succeeded without compromising what I believed in, no matter how much it took me off the beaten path or how foolish others thought I was. My name is Michael. Just your average guy working as an MR, a pharmaceutical company. MR stands for medical representative, a job where I explain medications to doctors and pharmacists and sell them. In short, think of me as a salesperson with medicines as my product. Why am I working as an MR now? It all started when I lost my mother to breast cancer at the age of 20. I was raised by a single mom, and her loss left me cursing the world. But with the support of my girlfriend at the time, now my wife Emily, I managed to keep living and looking forward. That's when I decided I wanted to be someone who could save lives. In my sophomore year of college, I began researching medical careers and discovered the role of an MR. I studied on my own while finishing college and eventually landed a job at my current pharmaceutical company. Since becoming a professional, I married Emily, my college sweetheart, and we have a daughter named Sophie. She is already in middle school. A happy family and a dream job. My life might seem smooth sailing, but that's not entirely true. Hey Michael, you're at the bottom of the sales rankings again. You should really focus more on selling. It was Kevin. He is a colleague who joined this company in the same year. Kevin is great at sales, always ranking at the top every month. Thanks for the advice, but I believe in properly explaining and getting understanding before making a sale, right? Noble, but the real world isn't that forgiving. Maybe you should let go of those, principles. That's why you're known as Mr. Useless behind your back, he said. I responded with a wry smile. I have always taken the stance that I explain things properly to people and make sure they understand about the medicine before they buy it, based on the reason why I decided to pursue this job and the experience I have gained in the course of my work. As Kevin said to me earlier, that is exactly what I have been doing. Because the medicines we handle can have a significant impact on people's lives. Ever since losing my mom, I've been driven by the desire to save lives. That's what I don't care about sales rankings. My goal is to ensure doctors are convinced and prescribe our medicines to their patients. That's something I'll never compromise on. Unfortunately, that has left me consistently at the bottom or third from the bottom of the sales rankings. Looks like you're at the bottom again. Turning around to the voice, I saw my boss, the executive director John. Hello John, how are you? How about you? You're giving clients all the unnecessary details as usual, aren't you? His voice, always laced with contempt and mockery, had become all too familiar. I could only respond in silence. "Well, just make sure you don't get fired," John said. John patted my shoulder and walked away. He is the executive director, as mentioned before, and a highly capable man. His skills effectively place him in a position equivalent to the CEO's right-hand man. And for him, I was just a convenient outlet for stress. He always ridiculed my performance by mocking my principles. And in the end, he always left, hinting at my possible termination. I really wanted to talk back. In fact, I used to do so in the beginning. But no matter how much I tried to explain my perspective, he would just brush it off with a laugh. After a few repeats of this, when he told me, "If you want to work with such high and mighty ideals, first try beating my sales numbers," I was left speechless. And since John was a high-ranking executive, it is easy to imagine how others treated me. Led by John, I was seen and treated as Mr. Useless by superiors, peers, and subordinates alike. Sometimes, I thought about abandoning my approach and working like everyone else, hoping to avoid such treatment. But each time, I shook off the thought, reminding myself it would defeat the purpose of why I took this job. It was one day when I was continuing to work despite my daily worries. A big business opportunity came my way. The client was none other than Dr. Baker, a leading figure in the medical community. The opportunity arose through a doctor at a local hospital I had known since I was a patient as a kid, and now as a customer. This doctor had recommended our new medicine to Dr. Baker. The news caused a stir in the office, because the big deal had landed with Mr. Useless. "Way to go. I heard you got a deal with Dr. Baker." John slapping my back enthusiastically. His voice and face lacked the usual mocking tone. "Listen, I'm sure you know this, but you have to make this deal a success. No matter what, bring back that contract. This is a major deal for the company," he added. To which I replied, "I'll do my best." The client was that Dr. Baker. I was nervous and, of course, wanted to succeed. But I planned to do it my usual way. As always, I intended to explain everything thoroughly and ensure the client fully understood the medication before selling it. Even if this method hadn't yielded great results before, especially with such a high-profile client, I believed in being honest and straightforward. The day of the meeting with Dr. Baker. After numerous simulations and thorough preparations, I and Kevin, who was chosen as my support, were on our way to the hospital to meet Dr. Baker. Man, at this rate, you might even surpass me. As I walked along, responding to Kevin, who said that with a laugh, "I don't think that's the case," at that moment, I heard a clattering sound from behind. Turning around, I saw a woman who had fallen. A white cane rolled beside her, indicating she was blind. "Are you okay?" I rushed over without thinking. As I approached, it was apparent she had scraped her knee in the fall. The wound was visible through her torn stockings. As the woman began to speak, someone called out from behind, "Hey, what are you doing?" It was Kevin. He continued, "This isn't the time for that." That reminded me of the business meeting. But I just couldn't bring myself to leave the woman and go to the meeting. "What happened to you?" I asked the woman, who seemed flustered, and she said, "I need to get home quickly. I'm in a hurry." She explained that she had received a call from her daughter, who was home looking after her 5-year-old son, saying that he had collapsed. Her daughter was still in elementary school and didn't know what to do. She had tried calling her husband, but he didn't answer the phone. So, she was hurrying home. She continued, "Understood, let's head to your home first. I'll hail a taxi." "Just wait a moment," I said. Despite Kevin calling out "hey" to me, I didn't respond to him. I hailed a taxi, led the woman into it, and joined her. In the taxi, I called 911 and headed to the woman's home. We arrived at her home before the ambulance did. I supported the frantic woman to her front door and waited outside after making sure she entered her house. The ambulance arrived shortly after. I explained the situation to the paramedics and assured them inside. After a while of hectic activity from the paramedics, the woman came out. Her son had been examined and fortunately, it wasn't serious. Relieved, I was about to leave when the woman said, "I'd like to thank you. Could you tell me your name and the name of your company?" I saw no reason not to, so I honestly introduced myself and left my business card. "Just in case, please have your husband verify this later," and then left her house. After leaving, I hailed another taxi to head to the hospital. In the taxi, checking my phone, I saw an unprecedented number of missed calls, emails, and message notifications. Feeling heavy-hearted, I headed to the hospital, where the business meeting was supposed to be, only to find Dr. Baker had already left. Returning to the office, I was immediately met with John's angry voice. "What have you done?" he yelled. I quickly apologized, "I'm sorry," but I immediately tried to explain. Actually, there was this woman who had collapsed. John interrupted me, saying irritably, "I heard from Kevin. You helped a blind woman. Huh? You ruined a crucial business deal for our company just for some nobody who won't make a difference in society. Is that it? You and your ever so noble principles? Or is it that? Did you feel sympathy because you're both useless?" His harsh words left me speechless for a moment. What a way to put it. I tried to continue. "That's not it at all," but John cut me off. "Shut up. It's the truth," John continued, with a much sterner look than usual. "And just so you know, you're fired. You really became Mr. Useless, who is good for nothing. Hot damn, if only that deal had gone through, we could have solidified our company's position." I watched as John walked away. Then he turned back and said, "What are you standing around for? Get started on your resignation and hand over and leave. I don't want to see your face anymore." After that, I mechanically did as told, preparing for my resignation and handing over my responsibilities before heading home. On the train back, all I could think about was how to explain this to my wife and daughter. "I'm home," I said, entering the house with a much heavier heart than usual. "Hi, Michael," came the reply from inside. Entering the living room, my wife Emily looked concerned. "What's wrong? You look pale," she asked. I hesitated for a moment. I didn't want to lie. After some contemplation, I decided to be honest. "The truth is, I got fired." "Fired?" both Emily and my daughter Sophie exclaimed in unison. "Why? Did you do something wrong?" asked a surprised Sophie. "No, I didn't do anything wrong, but..." I explained about the major business deal today, how I stopped to help a blind woman I found collapsed on the way, and how that made me late for the meeting, leading to my termination. Indeed, I didn't do anything wrong, but being fired, what are we going to do? We have some savings, so we might manage for a while, but Sophie's exams are coming up soon," Emily and Sophie continued. It was the reaction I expected. The atmosphere in the living room was heavier than it had ever been. "I'll try hard to find a new job soon." That was all I could say. Then, the next day, still dragging the heavy air of yesterday, I left my uncomfortable home for the last cleanup at the office. As soon as I arrived, I was summoned to the president's office. Considering what John had said about the incident being a big deal for the company, I thought maybe the president himself was going to fire me, and with that thought, I headed to his office. I knocked at the door 3 times. Immediately, a voice from inside said, "Come in." "Excuse me." With a heavy heart, yet consciously trying not to let it show in my voice or on my face, I opened the door. And I was surprised by the scene that unfolded before me. There in the room were the president, Dr. Baker, and the blind woman I had helped the day before. "Michael, right, thank you for yesterday. My son is safe thanks to you," she said. No, I didn't do anything special," I hastily replied as the woman bowed her head. Straightening up, She smiled and continued. I apologize for not introducing myself yesterday. I am Emma Baker, the daughter of Dr. Baker here. I was stunned for a moment, not quite processing what she had said. During that pause, Dr. Baker, who had been silent until then, began to speak. Yesterday, you saved my daughter and consequently my grandson. Had you not been there for my daughter, my grandson's life might have been at risk. I'm truly grateful. Thank you. Saying this, Dr. Baker also bowed his head. Startled, I hurriedly managed to say something. Please, don't mention it. Raise your head. You did something to be proud of. No need to be modest, said Dr. Baker. Dr. Baker meeting my eyes and smiling just like Miss Baker had. Furthermore, after learning that you were the one who helped my daughter yesterday, I contacted your company. I explained the situation and learned that you had been fired. I asked the president to reconsider. Shocked by his words, I turned my gaze to the president. The president nodded with a complex expression, a mix of happiness and concern. In other words, you're not fired. Stunned by the sudden turn of events, I could only gape as Dr. Baker continued with a smile. Now, can we get back to business? Please, tell me about the new medicine. Somehow, I managed to respond, yes, of course. I prepared the documents and began explaining the new medicine to Dr. Baker. As usual, I explained everything, including both the merits and demerits, ensuring he understood every aspect of the medicine throughout the discussion. That concludes my explanation. Do you have any questions? Still feeling nervous, my mouth was dry by the time I finished speaking. Well, I do have one question, Dr. Baker said. Yes, what is it? I asked, nervously wondering if there had been any oversight. Why did you explain all aspects of the new medicine to me, not just the good, but also the bad? It's because. The answer flowed smoothly, despite it not being part of any simulation. I spoke about my wish to save lives, a wish I had since losing my mother. Medications are directly prescribed to patients, so I always want doctors to understand both the advantages and disadvantages before making a contract. I explained to every client, ensuring they fully understood the medication before I sold it. Dr. Baker smiled satisfactorily at my explanation. You are a good MR. We'll use this new medicine. And so, what seemed like a huge blunder turned into a great success. 6 months later, the deal was a turning point for me. I was promoted, and my standing in the company changed. I could reassure my family and was living happily. As for John, who had tried to fire me, his past misdeeds came to light following the incident, and he was demoted from his position as executive director. Now, he works under me as a regular employee in sales. And today, we're going out for a family dinner to celebrate my promotion. As I was about to leave work on time, Kevin approached me. Sorry, can I talk to you for a minute? Just 5 minutes. I have something to say. I checked my watch and agreed. You know, you're amazing. You really went above and beyond me. It was just good luck. No, it wasn't. It's all about the effort you've put in. As he said this, Kevin bought a can of coffee and handed it to me. I gratefully accepted it and opened it. Actually, I've always admired you. Really, you always maintained the integrity that I gave up on, right? Despite being ostracized by others and ridiculed by superiors, I just didn't have the strength to do that. So, I've always been envious of you. I was surprised by his sudden confession. Seeing my surprise, Kevin gave a small smile and continued. That's why, when you succeeded like this, I was happy too. I've always wanted to say this. Congratulations. With that, Kevin said, sorry to hold you up. You must have plans, right? And then left. I left the office feeling refreshed and surprised. The feeling was incomparably better than the day I was told I was fired. I was greeted with warm voices from my family as soon as I got home. "Tom, you're going to be held responsible for this." The voice of the department head, Mike, echoed in the silent office. I was being made to take the fall for a mistake made by my boss. I was supposed to become a full-time employee after the next contract as a temp worker. The apparel store I was currently assigned to was one of the top selling in the company. As an assistant, I was supporting the work of the manager, Alex, but for some reason, he disliked me. Looking down on me as a temp worker, he dumped all the tedious tasks on me. When I vented about this to a colleague at a company meeting, they said, "Alex's uncle is one of our company's board members, so it's a nepotism hire. Just lay low until you get transferred." Realizing this, I was utterly dismayed. Then, one day, an incident happened. Somehow, 10 times the planned amount of scarves and knit hats arrived at the store. In a panic, I checked the order form and discovered a critical error, an extra 0. Scarves and knit hats are seasonal, so overstocking is a problem. "Who ordered in bulk? Wasn't that your responsibility? You said you'd handle it from start to finish, right?" Normally, as an assistant, I am also supposed to double-check the product orders, but Alex went ahead and placed the order without my input, saying, "Your confirmation doesn't make a difference anyway." Then, for some reason, I was called in and scolded by the store operations department. Alex must have reported it as my fault. Of course, I explained and objected, but apparently, Alex's uncle, a board member, insisted that Alex couldn't have made such a basic mistake. Alex continued to make order mistakes under my name, report customer complaints as if they were addressed to me, and blame me for every mistake. No one listened to my side of the story. Finally, Mike declared that my contract wouldn't be renewed. It was de facto dismissal. I was furious. When I told my wife, she was outraged and suggested divorce. She had been against my temp job, worried about financial instability, but I had reassured her, promising a full-time position soon, in my dream industry of fashion. We'd been married for 3 years with no kids. Our relationship was already strained, but the dismissal was the last straw. With the economy in a slump, there was no guarantee I'd find another job quickly. And unemployment benefits wouldn't cover the bills. It was clear I couldn't support my full-time homemaker anymore. She said she'd rather divorce than work. Since she married me right after college, she had never worked outside. She was beautiful and young, so she could easily find someone else after leaving me. For her sake, I decided to let her go. But it hurt to be so easily discarded by her. I wondered if she married me just for my salary. Abandoned by both my company and wife, my future looked bleak. Discarded by my workplace and wife, I became a jobless single man, moving out of our apartment into a cheap studio. Now, I visit the employment agency daily. But still, I couldn't find a job better than the one at my last job. Every job I looked at paid significantly less. But there is no other way out. I couldn't stay unemployed forever. I applied for a sales position at a small company. It was when I sent my resume and went for the interview. The weather forecast was off, and it was pouring outside. Luckily, I had an folding umbrella in my bag, so I stayed dry. While waiting in line at the taxi stand near the station, a woman completely drenched from the rain joined the line behind me. She must not have had an umbrella and got caught in the unexpected downpour. Her pantsuit was soaking wet, and droplets of water were falling from the loose strands of her tied-up hair. She was desperately trying to dry off with a handkerchief, but she was too wet to wipe it off with such a small cloth. A taxi soon arrived, and I opened the door. I turned to the woman behind me and said, "Please, go ahead." "Are you sure?" She looked at me curiously. "Yes, you'll catch a cold if you stay wet like that. It's better if you get home quickly." "Thank you so much." She thanked me again and again before getting into the taxi. Then, It took a while for the next taxi to come, and I ended up being late for the interview. Naturally, I didn't get the job. But I didn't regret doing a good deed. What concerned me more was whether that woman made it home safely and didn't catch a cold. Then a few days passed from that. I was on my way to another job interview at a different company. It was a large company that runs several apparel shops. I was shown to the reception room and waited for a while until the interviewer arrived. I stood up. "Nice to meet you. My name is Tom. Thank you for this opportunity." I looked at them, a man in his 40s and a woman in her 30s. The woman seemed surprised to see me. "You're the man from that time." On closer inspection, she was the woman I had given my taxi spot to. "I really appreciate what you did for me that day." It seemed that she couldn't thank me enough. "Oh, from the other day. No, it was nothing. That sudden rain was quite a hassle, wasn't it? Kara, do you know him?" the man asked her. Kara explained to him how we met. Then the interview began. What a coincidence to meet here. During the interview, I found myself distracted, thinking about her. I answered a few questions, and the interview went smoothly. After the interview, as I was about to leave, the woman caught up to me. "Could I have a moment? What can I do for you?" I asked, puzzled. "Well, I would like to thank you properly, so if you're free, I'd like to have dinner together after this. Of course, it's my treat." "No, you don't need to thank me for that. What a conscientious person." While thinking this, I felt hesitant about being treated to a meal by the interviewer. I politely declined her invitation. "But I won't feel right if I don't do this," she insisted. After much hesitation and her persistent insistence, I reluctantly agreed to go to dinner with her. We arranged to meet in front of the station and left the company. There was still some time before our meeting, so I killed time by browsing the shops in a nearby building until it was time. She arrived a bit late. "Sorry for being late," she said. "No, it's okay," I replied. She took me to a restaurant she frequented. It was a cozy, independently owned pub. "Welcome." The lively voices of the staff filled the air. As we were seated, Kara handed me the menu and said, "Please order anything you like." For starters, I ordered a draft beer and edamame. She also ordered a draft beer, along with a salad and several skewers of grilled chicken. After setting down the menu, she said, "Thank you so much for that day. With your help, I was able to make it in time for my mother's final moments." "Your mother?" "Yes, she was hospitalized with a stroke, and I received a call that day saying she was critical. I rushed out without an umbrella, and then the rain started. I'm sorry to hear that, but I managed to see her and say my thanks at the end. If you hadn't given up your taxi that day, I wouldn't have made it in time. I'm truly grateful." "I see," I replied. She again said thank you. Her mother's funeral had just ended the day before, and she had returned to work that day. Then, she and I talked about various things. We talked about work, her mother's memories, my previous job, and even about my divorce. Losing a mother must be incredibly hard. I hoped this time would at least provide her some distraction. She was a great listener, showing deep interest in everything I said, making it easy to talk to her. And upon closer inspection, she was quite a beautiful woman. Just looking at her was soothing. The time spent drinking and chatting with her, who was both a good talker and an attractive woman, was truly enjoyable. Eventually, as the closing time of the restaurant approached, we decided to head home. We were going in opposite directions, so we parted ways at the station's gate. "Thanks for joining me on such short notice. I'm glad I could express my gratitude," she said. "Not at all. Thank you for the meal." I said this as we parted. Right after that, I thought, oh no, shoot, I forgot to ask for her contact information. Honestly, I wanted to see her again. I should have written down my contact details and given them to her. But without her contact info, there was nothing I could do. It was too late for regrets. All I could do was to hope that I would be hired by her company. I prayed to God that I would pass the interview. More than getting the job, my mind was filled with the desire to see her again. And then the next day, my phone rang. Looking at the caller ID, it was from her company. "Hello, this is Tom," I answered with a nervous voice. The caller was Kara. "Regarding the job interview the other day, you've passed. Can you start work from tomorrow?" she said. I mentally did a fist pump. "Thank you so much. I'll do my best." Before hanging up, I added, "By the way, Kara, could I have your contact information? If you don't mind, I'd like to go out for drinks again." Then Kara said, "Sure, let's go," and gave me her contact details. Yes. I jumped for joy on the spot. I never thought I'd feel this happy again, especially after being at rock bottom, having just been dumped by my wife. The next day, I went to my new job, excited. Kara became my direct supervisor. The new job was challenging at first, but I quickly learned the ropes thanks to Kara's clear instructions. About a week after joining, I asked Kara out for drinks. She took me to another one of her recommended places. "Has your sorrow healed?" I asked, and she shook her head. "I can forget about it at work, but when I'm home alone, I just can't help but think of my mother." "I see. Feel free to call me whenever you're feeling lonely," I offered. Then she blinked rapidly and asked, "Really?" "Of course, I'm always here if you need someone to talk to." "Thank you," she said. From then on, we started talking on the phone at night. She was an only child, and her father had passed away when she was young, so she was raised by only her mother. That's why they had such a strong bond. On weekends, I'd help her sort through her mother's belongings at her childhood home. There were so many memories there. "This is a photo from elementary school. It brings me back memories," she reminisced. I realized the profound impact of losing someone and thought I should be more filial to my parents while they're still alive. "This is the ring my mother always treasured," she said. After keeping a few keepsakes, she decided to dispose of the rest through a disposal service. Also, her mother's house became vacant and to be sold. "It's sad to lose a place full of memories, but it can't be helped," she murmured. I felt an urge to embrace and comfort her. I wanted to be someone who could support her. "Kara, I like you," I found myself blurting out. "Please, will you go out with me?" Her eyes sparkled as she replied. "I'm happy. I'd be honored." She gently held my hand. And so, Kara and I became a couple. A year later, I decided to take her to my parents' house. I wanted to tell them about our plans to get married. "We're home, Dad and Mom," I said. "Welcome back, Tom. We've been waiting," they replied. "This is Kara, my fiancée." I introduced her to my parents. My parents really liked her, as if they had gained a daughter. "From now on, think of us as your real parents and feel free to rely on us," she said, offering her hand, and Kara's eyes welled up with tears. She was happy to have a new family. Despite having experienced life's lowest point, I am now living happily. I heard through the grapevine that my old company was on the brink of bankruptcy after overexpanding. Leaving there turned out to be a good thing. I'm grateful for the fate that allowed me to land a job at a company I love and meet a wonderful woman, and to have found happiness. My name is James. I'm fed up with incompetent people. My beloved wife told me this one day. I work as a hotelier. Nowadays, to eliminate gender bias, my job is also referred to as hotelier. I've been in this profession for 11 years since I was 20, making me 31 now. Even though I work for a famous hotel group, the pay isn't great. I've always loved traveling, which led me to become interested in hotel management. I studied hotel-related subjects in junior college and was lucky enough to get a job with my current group after graduating. I acquired the necessary qualifications during my studies, thinking it would be an advantage for my employment. However, once I started working, I realized that qualifications and educational backgrounds weren't crucial. Being a hotelier seems like a professional job, but once you get the hang of it, much of it is mundane tasks that anyone could do. My work shifts aren't flexible, and I often have to work late at night. Work is non-stop labor and more physically demanding than one might expect. Despite the low pay, seeing the smiles of our guests is rewarding. However, when I first started, I did feel a gap between my ideals and reality. But this job has taught me some valuable things. One is that I became proficient in Spanish. Due to many international tourists, I learned not just textbook Spanish, but also how to communicate naturally. Another thing, and most precious thing to me, was meeting and marrying my wife, Lisa. I met Lisa 3 years ago. She transferred to my workplace from a distant land. Our group, with nationwide operations, often relocates employees. Lisa is a year older than me and has a short haircut. She seemed like a reliable, mature sister figure. Her occasional smiles were incredibly charming, and I gradually became smitten with her. After a year of pursuing her, we started dating. 2 years ago, we got married. We used the hotel's venue for our wedding and received grand congratulations from everyone. It was the happiest moment of my life. Lisa and I share a hobby: soft tennis. I played for about 6 years in a small team during middle and high school. In contrast, Lisa was skilled enough to compete in national tournaments. We often played tennis together on our days off, but I never won a match against her. We frequently teamed up for doubles tournaments, but I usually held her back, resulting in early exits. Yet, Lisa always kindly supported me. Despite not winning, playing tennis with her was genuinely enjoyable. However, one sentence from Lisa shattered my happiness. Actually, I'm pregnant with Bob's child. Seeing Lisa's downcast profile, my mind went blank. Bob is the hotelier team leader at our workplace. He's a very supportive person and turns 42 this year. He also played soft tennis, and we often talked about tennis together. He celebrated our marriage more than anyone, and most importantly, he is married. Bob and Lisa had an affair. I confronted her, but she remained silent, looking down. Then, after a while, she quietly said to me, "I really wanted to have my own child." Yes, Lisa and I couldn't have children. We tried fertility treatments with no avail, but she got pregnant with Bob after just one try. "I'll pay consolation money, so I want a divorce." Lisa's selfish words left me speechless. As I stood there agape, she continued, "I'm sorry for being so selfish, but you have to understand, I desperately wanted my own child. Even though it's with Bob, I finally got pregnant. I have a duty to raise this child. I'll pay any amount of consolation money. So please, let's pretend our marriage never happened, and I want you to find a new path with someone else." "What are you talking about? I don't understand a thing you're saying, Lisa." I tried repeatedly to convince her to reconsider, but her resolve was firm. I felt a strength in her, not just as a woman but as a mother. I realized I might not be able to hold her back. Driven by intuition, I lashed out at her in anger. "You're so selfish. You always acted like you knew everything, looking down on me. I never liked that about you." I exaggerated my minor inconveniences with Lisa. The truth is, I've never felt such complaints. I genuinely admired her intelligence and knowledge. But even as I became emotional, Lisa remained cool. Finally, She stood up with a tired look and a cold gaze, asking, "Are you done now? I thought you were a great partner. It's disappointing to know you felt this way." With a mocking, cold smile, she said, "Well, if I had one complaint about you, it's that you're terribly bad at soft tennis. I'm fed up with playing with someone so unskilled," and left the house leaving those words. Stunned by an abrupt goodbye, I was unable to think for a while. Soon after, Lisa and Bob resigned. Apparently, they planned to start a new business together. Bob probably had some savings, and Lisa was actually from a wealthy family, so they casually paid me consolation money and left as if nothing had happened. It's as if they're saying everything's fine as long as you pay money. Their arrogant attitude made it even more painful. Naturally, the news of Bob and Lisa's sudden resignation and our divorce spread quickly. It was clear to everyone that I was betrayed and abandoned. Poor James. Cheated on by his boss and divorced. It's like watching a soap opera. My colleagues David and Mary seemed to enjoy my messy situation as if it were a daytime drama. To distract myself from the stress, I turned to alcohol. After work, I'd wander the streets, drinking heavily. Lisa loved wine, so we often drank it together at dinner. She was more mature than me, so I even studied wine to keep up with her. When will I stop thinking about Lisa? I realized I was always searching for her presence. That's why I'm underlooked. Treated like a child. I drank more, ashamed of my immaturity. Drinking myself to the point of damaging my organs was a form of self-harm. But I couldn't forget the pain of being betrayed by my loved one without the help of alcohol. I was heavily intoxicated in a bar like always, but one day, I was so intoxicated that my vision was distorted. No one would stop me anyways. Everyone just watched, entertained. In my despair, I asked the bartender for another drink. But then, suddenly, a voice from above said, "Please cancel the refill." I looked up and saw a woman standing there, looking down at me with concern. Nancy. Her name is Nancy. 1 year younger than me and a colleague at the same workplace. "James, are you okay?" "Yeah, I'm fine, all fine." "Really? Well, I'm gonna sit next to you if that's okay." With that, Nancy took the seat next to me. I joined the company at 20 after graduating at junior college. Nancy joined a year after me. So, we've known each other for almost 10 years now. She's usually very bright and active. Even at work, she teases me, despite being younger, always mocking me playfully. Although I found her cheeky, she was one of the few juniors I could talk to about anything. "Why didn't you talk to me about Lisa and Bob? You should have talked about these rough times with me." Nancy looked at me with serious eyes, almost appearing angry. I felt uncomfortable and looked away from her. "How could I tell you? It's such an embarrassing story, even with you." The idea of telling someone my wife was taken by my boss was humiliating. But Nancy insisted, "That's why you should tell me," and leaned in close to me, showing her earnestness. "You'll ruin your health if you keep drinking like this, James." When I muttered an apology, Nancy briefly replied, "Just keep that in mind." Then we chatted about silly things, and then found myself complaining about Lisa to her. I'll never forgive those two. It's terrible for the child, born out of an affair. Nancy nodded and listened to me, even when I spoke in a rough manner. "Well, it's not the child's fault, though." When I said that, Nancy smiled happily for some reason. "What's with that look?" "Nothing. I was just thinking about how kind you are, James." She smiled teasingly, as usual. Good grief. Always being mocked by Lisa, and now you. I was cruelly dumped, you know. She left me because we couldn't have kids, and during soft tennis, she told me she was fed up with playing with someone so unskilled. I spoke bitterly, and Nancy, looking down at me with moist eyes, said, "Shall I give it a try?" "Huh? In the dimly lit bar with small orange bulbs as its light source, Nancy's expression seemed stunningly attractive. The day after, also my day off, I was out with Nancy. At the tennis court. "Hey, Ja." Nancy swung her racket with a shout. "You're terrible." I laughed, and she fired back, "What do you mean?" swinging her racket even more vigorously. Nancy had asked that night, "Do you want to try me as your doubles partner?" With alcohol in my system, my mind briefly wandered to the wrong idea. Embarrassed by my adolescent-like fantasies despite being a divorcee, I focused on returning Nancy's shot. She returned my balls with nervous-like movements. "Hey, Nancy, you're pretty good." "Hee, maybe I could be your doubles partner after all." She smiled proudly, and I replied, "Don't underestimate soft tennis." I swung a forehand, driving the ball down the line. After my divorce with Lisa, it had been a while since I've done any physical activities. Thanks to Nancy, I was able to forget the unpleasantness during the day. From then on, Nancy and I occasionally played tennis when our shifts aligned. As a result, I drank less, and little by little, both my mind and body began to regain health. People around me even started to notice, saying I seemed a bit brighter. Indeed, I felt better physically, and I thought less about Lisa over time. All thanks to Nancy. At that time, I realized that I naturally smiled when I was with Nancy. I've always seen her as a friend, but now I see her in a different light. James, I'm excited about the upcoming soft tennis tournament. Don't hold me back, okay? Despite turning 30 this year, she clasped her hands behind her back, tilted her head, and beamed at me, and I couldn't help but find her adorable. However, it was then that I was transferred to a different hotel. My first transfer in 11 years of service. This made me a bit nervous. As I pondered over my initial greetings, I couldn't stop thinking about Nancy. I didn't want to leave her. The sooner the better to ask her. Without any hesitation, I called her out and proposed, asking her to come with me. Nancy opened her eyes. There are tears in her eyes. I had thought she would accept, but she tearfully said, "I don't deserve to marry you." Despite my attempts to understand what she meant, she wouldn't answer. Ultimately, our relationship ended there, and I faced the day of my move. One day, as I was wallowing in disappointment, I received a phone call. The name on the caller ID was Lisa. I was surprised, but now, unlike before, I had no lingering feelings. Wondering what she wanted after all this time, I picked up the phone. "What's up? Calling me like this?" I spoke coldly, but Lisa, unfazed by my attitude, greeted me as if nothing had happened, saying, "Long time no see, have you been well?" When Lisa didn't start talking, I told her I was going to hang up, but she said, "Wait, and then, I want to start over with you." I was momentarily stunned by her words. I wondered if she was joking or making fun of me, but something felt off with the way Lisa was acting over the phone. I was curious, but anything she says now is too late. I refused, saying it was impossible, but then she said, "Are you sure? You're dating Nancy now, right? That girl is bad news." "What do you mean?" Then Lisa revealed a shocking truth. Apparently, Nancy had an affair in the past with our boss, Bob. I wanted to believe it was a lie, but Nancy had said to me, "I'm not worthy of marriage." Thanks to Lisa's story, what Nancy said back then made sense. However, I said, "That's all in the past." I still wanted to accept Nancy, regardless of her past. I loved her that much. I could tell Lisa was slightly shaken by my reaction. Then, in the next moment, she started crying and said, "Then I want you to forgive me too." She went on to explain that she miscarried the child she had with Bob. Their relationship worsened. Bob had left her for another woman. She had seen Nancy and me playing tennis by chance, and having heard about Nancy's affair with Bob, she felt jealous and threatened to expose their past to me. Hearing Lisa's story, I thought how selfish it was, but I couldn't help but feel sympathy for her wanting a child she couldn't have. I knew from dating Lisa how much she loved children. "Sorry, please forgive me. I wanted a child. I really wanted one, but in the end I couldn't forget you," she said through tears. Lisa's regret over breaking up with me over the sake of children, but ending up in a bad situation pained my heart a little. She has a big ego. She doesn't cry easily. Her crying was proof that she wasn't faking and genuinely needed help. But I shook my head. "I'm sorry, but I love Nancy. I fell for the mature and cool Lisa. Don't make such pathetic excuses." Lisa was speechless at my words, and a silence fell. After a while, she said in her usual calm voice, "I'm sorry for showing you this embarrassing side of me, and then, I won't call again. Be happy." And with that, she hung up. I immediately called Nancy. She appeared in front of me, awkwardly as usual, and asked, "What's up?" I told her about Lisa's call and what she said about Nancy and Bob. Nancy then began to speak hesitantly. 10 years ago, I foolishly fell for Bob. He was kind to me during training. I knew he was married and dabbled with other women, but I was smitten. But before anything serious happened, she regained her sense and refused Bob's advances. So the affair Lisa thought happened between Nancy and Bob was a misunderstanding. After that, Nancy wanted a real relationship and fell for me. But since I was married to Lisa, she gave up on me. However, when Lisa and I broke up, Nancy saw an opportunity. I approached her as she bowed her head, saying, "I'm sorry," and gently held both of her hands. "You were young, and I know you're not that person anymore, so I want you to be with me. Stay by my side." Her tears dropped onto our joined hands. And then, Nancy accepted my proposal. Thus, I began a new life, walking forward with Nancy by my side. After that, I successfully transferred to a new job and started a new life with Nancy. Now, we are set to participate in a tennis tournament together. Let's go, aim for the championship. With my new doubles partner, we will keep striving forward.